What's going on, everybody? This is Average Discussion. Thank you for joining me today. Today is Friday, December 22nd, 2023. It's probably around 40 degrees. I didn't really look it up, but it's about 40 degrees here, plus or minus a few in the Salt Lake area. You're listening to Average Discussion. This is a podcast where I talk about things that interest me. Sometimes it's news topics, sometimes it's sports, sometimes it's off the wall stuff. It's really just kind of random, and I try to, I don't know, just whatever I feel like talking about in the moment, I like to talk about. Sometimes it gets deep and personal, and then other times, it's kind of shit talking and angry or whatever, right? But point being is that I enjoyed this show, and I titled it Average Discussion because I'm an average guy. I think I'm a little bit above average in some things, but probably pretty average in most things. There's nothing special about me except for the fact that I'm me. And I try to hold on to that. So I titled this Average Discussion because I want to have a conversation with average, everyday people. Okay. That's been my goal with this the entire time. So that's why it's titled the way that it is. Hey, listen, a few things to get over before I get into the episode today. The episode today is called Coincidental Timing. Okay. And before I get into that, I want to kind of go over a few things, some minor changes that were made. So before I was doing the Average Discussion podcast, excuse me, and then over here I was doing the lunch break episodes where I would generally talk about the news and things like that, right? But what I found was on those other platforms, it was struggling to separate the two. So for instance, on Spotify, I was getting my regular Average Discussion shows were being they were being posted over there, but I couldn't find my lunch break episodes. So because I am trying to regrow this again, and I say again like it was super big before, but it definitely had better traction before because I was more active and more consistent. And so I'm trying to do that again. And to prevent some confusion, I decided to just collectively put everything back under the Average Discussion platform. So I'll still do the lunch break. This is kind of like the lunch break. This is usually when I do it, but I wanted to do a little bit more in depth. Obviously, I'm doing a video. If you are listening to the audio and you'd like to see what I look like with all the shit that I talk, you can head over to YouTube, youtube.com. Average Discussion is the channel. Please like and subscribe to it. I would like to do these live so that I don't have to upload them because that takes forever. But it is what it is, and I'm just excited to really kind of get back into this. So please head over to the socials, facebook.com. I'm on X, formerly known as Twatter. Average Discussion at AVG Discussion over there. I'm really trying to rebuild that one because I don't like the platform for just killing time, but I do recognize the benefits of it, right? So I don't really do much on TikTok anymore, but I do have one over there. Maybe I'll put some clips in there and we can try that. But Instagram obviously is just Instagram. If you're not looking at pictures, there's really no point to Instagram. So that's just my opinion. But so please head over on those platforms, look up Average Discussion. You'll find me. I'm there. Links are in those pages too, so I guess that doesn't really help you. But the main podcast is on Spreaker.com, but we do stream to iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, which I think is going to close down soon. I was working on the Apple one, but for whatever reason, it's not letting me log in. I tried to create a new account, link it to that. It's just not working with me very well, so I'm still trying to figure that out. But at the moment, it's not really working on the Apple product side. Surprise. But that's where we're at on that. So please head over and give me some support on those. Okay. I greatly appreciate it. Please like and share stuff. Just get the exposure out there and feedback. I mean, feedback is important. It helps me to improve, and I want to do this. I don't make any money off this. There's no ads in my stuff. I would like to build it organically, if that makes sense, or at least what I think organically means. And I'm not interested in paying Facebook to promote my stuff. I'm not interested in paying Twitter or X, to be able to edit my posts. Like if I misspell something, then it is what it is. I misspelled it. I'm not perfect, hence the name Average Discussion. So just wanted to clarify some of that stuff. Obviously, we got Christmas coming up. I'll actually be out of town after Christmas, so I don't know that I'll get any content up next week, but we'll see. Who knows? Yeah. Anyway, so as I said, this episode is titled Coincidental Timing. Now, normally I just spitball off the brain, but because of what I'm talking about, I wanted to make sure that I kind of rehearsed it and went over it, right? And of course, nothing wants to work. There we go. So coincidental timing, right? I think there's people out there that would tell you nothing is coincidence. And I think for some things I believe that, but I do believe that coincidence is a real thing. When it pertains to bigger things, that's where I start to get a little suspicious, right? So, without further ado, coincidental timing, average discussion. Here we go. There are things out there that just strike me as odd when it comes to the timing of the matter. A couple of which I aim to speak about today. For starters, how strange and coincidental is it, the events of 1947? The United States Air Force is established on September 18, 1947, under the National Security Act of 1947, legislation that was put in place after World War II to better strengthen the government. This took effect one day after the Senate confirmed an individual named James Forrestal, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, as the first Secretary of Defense. Now, Forrestal was a successful financier on Wall Street before he was inevitably drafted for the World Wars, and he eventually became the Undersecretary of the Navy in 1940. Apologize for the sounds, guys. I am at my place of employment. You can see it all behind me if you're watching the video. I'm going to put a pause on this. I didn't say what I usually say. Thank you for joining me in Studio Legacy. This is my luxurious studio. Usually I'm in my my truck, but the wife's at home all week working from home, so I get to drive her car. Man, I can't believe that's like my thing, and I forgot it. Anyways, sorry. But if you hear some noises, I do apologize. I am at work. You got to do them when you can do them, right? Anyways, so Forrestal was a successful financier on Wall Street before ultimately being drafted into the wars, and eventually became Undersecretary of the Navy in 1940. By 1944, he became the Secretary of the Navy after his superior, Colonel Frank Knox, died from a series of heart attacks. Now, Forrestal was strongly against the proposed Department of Defense, but was hard charged to run it from 1947 to 1949 after President Truman named him Secretary of Defense. The two men would often be at odds during this time, and Truman would eventually force the resignation of Mr. Forrestal. Okay, Forrestal. I really don't know if I'm saying that right, but so very shortly after this resignation, Mr. Forrestal's mental health would rapidly deteriorate to the point he was actually hospitalized for depression. While hospitalized in 1949, the same year he was forced out of the program that he did not like by the same guy who put him in charge, he would ultimately reach his demise via what was ruled a suicide after suffering fatal injuries sustained after falling out of the 16th floor window. Oh, this is going to be problematic, I can tell. Whoa, it went all the way to the bottom. I really messed this up, guys. Give me just a second here, because I don't want to mix up the notes. I typed all this out, by the way, last night. My daughter's really sick, and I was up late, just trying to be there for her and all that stuff. And so I was typing all this up. So I really had big plans for this, and here I go, man. I'm shooting from the hip, and I'm messing it up. So bear with me, guys. I do apologize. All right, so Again, he would ultimately reach his demise via what was ruled as suicide after suffering fatal injuries sustained after falling out of a 16th floor window. Then, of course, in 1954, the military honored him by naming a supercarrier after him. Makes sense. He spent a lot of time in the Navy, first Secretary of Defense. Got it. It all makes sense. Right, but of course, they would honor him in 1954, naming a supercarrier after him, as well as the James V. Forrestal building, which houses the headquarters of the United States Department of Energy. That's interesting to me, and I'll get into that in a minute. Also worth noting, the attending psychiatrist, Captain George R. Rains, was handpicked by Navy Surgeon General to oversee his care. Now, nothing strange about that. It might get loud for a second. I do apologize. Okay, so nothing strange about that as far as I can tell, with the exception of him being handpicked. Now, he appears to be free of corruption as far as I can tell. I did look into him, not super extensively, but I did more than a reasonable Google search on him. You know what I'm saying? And there really doesn't seem to be anything too crazy about the guy, but maybe that was the point. So now back to the hospital stay of Mr. Forrestal. Apparently, according to some forum sites, after the ceremony of his resignation as Secretary of Defense, he was accompanied in travel with a gentleman named Symington. Symington. Now, what I was getting this information from never listed a first name, so I did some research, and I am assuming that this is the former Missouri senator from 1953 to 1976, and he was also the first, if you ain't first, you're last, Secretary of the Air Force from 1947 to 1950. Now, apparently, the two of them traveled back to the Pentagon after this resignation ceremony. And per a testimony from Forrestal's personal assistant, he was deeply upset and even traumatized upon arrival. Now, within a day, the Air Force would fly Mr. Forrestal to the home of Robert Lovett, also a future Secretary of Defense himself. And apparently his first words upon arrival were, quote, "Bob, they're after me." Shortly after, Colonel George Rains would arrive, after a phone call made by this Bob guy, right? Colonel Rains would state that Mr. Forrestal was extremely depressed and he believed him to be suicidal. Apparently, at least. That's what this forum said. Now, the hospital he was staying at, in Bethesda, is a government hospital. And apparently, I don't know this to be true, but apparently suicidal patients were kept on the first floor for obvious reasons. However, it was determined that he would be better suited on the 16th floor. Interesting to note, this information is supposedly reported by a secretary of Colonel Rains himself. And it suggested that the decision was made by, quote, the people downtown. That doesn't sound like a mob movie. I don't know what does. Get them from downtown, see? Anyways, so apparently that decision was made by some sketchy people, right? Now, after his death, his journals and logs were confiscated by the U.S. government, and I'm sure that the usual, like, national security reasons were stated as the reason for the go raid his house of all his writings and stuff, right? I could do an entire episode on that kind of stuff, but I'm getting off topic. So why is this interesting? Why is this coincidental timing? Well, the Roswell crash happened in July 1947. 3 months later, the United States Air Force is born. Here we have an event that could lead you down many a rabbit hole, okay? And according to some polls, 1/3 of Americans think that Roswell was aliens. So in the spirit of conversation, let's look at that. Here we have a major potential crash of a craft of unknown origin, lands in the desert of New Mexico. A bunch of government agency people come in. They've got all this stuff up. They're taking pictures, all that good stuff, right? And 3 months later, the United States Air Force is born and becomes a single entity rather than a component of the Navy, because we had planes before the Air Force. They were just a department of the Navy, to the best of my understanding, right? And in 1947 is when they became a singular entity. It just so happens to be 3 months after Roswell. The first Secretary of Defense, Mr. Forrestal, I imagine at least, would have been heavily involved in this project. He is handpicked by the president, by the very president that would then force him to resign after voicing that he clearly did not want to play ball with the governmental program. Right now, to be fair, his arguments didn't seem to really be about anything that wasn't politically a political agenda, and it apparently sounded like he pissed off a lot of people in Congress and the Senate. So, but either way, he was handpicked by the very president that would then force him to resign after voicing that he clearly did not want to play ball. Then, after showing no signs of mental distress, even though I imagine he was overwhelmed by the nature of his position, but nobody said that he was. There was nothing that I was able to find that stated that he was having mental issues, right? He takes a ride with the first Secretary of the Air Force, who also ultimately probably would have been heavily involved in whatever happened in 1947, and is somehow plunged into a psychotic episode after this ride. He is then sent to a facility that houses psychiatric patients on the first floor, so they say, or so the article said that I was reading. Right? I don't know that to be true. Yet ends up on the 16th floor and is deemed a suicide after falling out of a window. Oh, and by the way, again, this was a government hospital, if you didn't put that together. So, then we name a building after him that just so happens to house the Department of Energy. Now, if there was a spacecraft that crash landed, I imagine the energy source for that would have been quite revolutionary, don't you? Very interesting. The correlations, the puzzle pieces, right? Now, I'm not saying this is or is not a thing. All I'm saying is that it appears very coincidental to me, the timing of things. Very interesting. Well, Chris, you can't just do a podcast off of one event. Well, I can. It's my show. But I won't. See, remember that Mayan calendar? Prophecy of the world ending on December 21st, 2012? They made a bunch of wild movies about it. Some of them were good, some of them were shit. YouTube was flooded with all these ideas. Well, interesting note that CERN, 5 months before the doomsday date, announced that they had found the Higgs boson, the elusive particle that lays the foundation for the matter that forms us and everything we see around us. It is also worth noting the amount of people that believe that CERN is responsible for sending us to another timeline via their experiments. Again, I'm not saying this is what happened. All I'm saying is the timing is very interesting. But how about this one? And this is where, if I'm going to get blocked on any platforms, I imagine it's going to be talking about this. Anyone remember the protests in Hong Kong back in 2019? You know, the largest series of demonstrations in the history of Hong Kong? Demonstrations broke out over an extradition bill that would essentially allow the government to arrest voices of political dissent. Okay? And the people were not happy about this. It is estimated more than 1 million people marched in a protest, calling for officials to resign. Police were often unable to control the situation and oftentimes clashing with protesters. Then, on or around November 3rd, 2019, things got real. At least 4 people were killed, some by gunfire, including an unarmed woman, and a university kid was found unconscious and would later die because of the traumas after 2 unsuccessful brain injuries. Then, like magic, it all came to a halt. But how? I mean, what would cause these clearly motivated protesters to stop? You guessed it. COVID. COVID-19. Like a miracle from the heavens itself, sent to protect the government that was about to be beheaded, a new and dangerous flu variant began sweeping across China, almost 1 month after the bloody clash. And its origins appeared to be from an area roughly 560 miles to the north. So, for perspective for me, that's like driving from Salt Lake to Vegas. I'll do that in an afternoon. Okay? So, 6 hours drive, roughly, give or take. I don't know. But, anyways. Now, in the name of safety, there was a reason to force lockdowns. Now, in the name of safety, they had the opportunity to rid the streets of the peasants challenging the government. Now, of course, this is likely just a giant coincidence. Okay? No government would unleash a deadly virus onto a population that would have a higher risk factor due to an inherited gene from archaic Neanderthals. Especially if that population carried 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA, right? I mean, this study literally came out and they said that because of an inherited trait from Neanderthals, certain population groups were actually more susceptible to this. They wouldn't do that. Like, that's got to be entirely coincidental, especially if that population carried on average 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA, right? Right? They wouldn't do that. I mean, why would they want to do something like that? It's not like it was the largest demonstration in Hong Kong history or, anything like that, right? Again, I'm not saying this is what happened. And I may even be off on some of the timeline stuff. But I'm not that far off. All I'm saying is the timing of 1.2 million people, at least that's what was reported in the Hong Kong area, getting sick and thousands dying seemed to quiet the noise and make the people upset at the government suddenly extremely dependent on that very government. That's all I'm saying. I mean, it's simply just coincidence that Italy was also having historical rallies and protests to demonstrate against their corrupt political leaders in December of 2019, where it is suggested that 193,000 people died from the virus, and 26 million people would test positive and be affected by it. Maybe not test positive, but would be affected by it. It simply has to be coincidental that the area of Tuscany, Italy, also has a population estimated to contain the highest percentage of Neanderthal DNA. In fact, according to the New Yorker, 2019 was a historic year worldwide for government protests. Now, lucky for those governments, there was a virus, I'd say. And since it's legal in most governments to restrict populations in the event of medical emergencies under the mask of safety, I'd say it provided a great outlet to curb the global unrest. But that's simply my opinion, okay? I mean, I'm not sure. I'm sure that's not what happened, okay? No government would harm their own people to keep control. I mean, we wouldn't have a word dedicated to define this very thing. Democide has to be made up. There's no way the U.S. government would participate in experiments on humans. There's definitely no way the army would experiment on its own soldiers either, right? I don't know. I had a project from a bluebird. That's all I'm going to say. Now, I'm not saying this is what happened, okay? I'm not saying this is what happened. I'm just saying it's quite interesting, the timeline, the coincidental timing of all these things. That's all I'm saying. I am not saying that it's not a real thing, because I do believe that it's a real thing. I just believe it was a real thing for a reason, is all I'm saying. I do believe that people really got sick, and I do believe that people really did die. I'm not doubting that. I'm not contesting that. I'm just arguing that I think it's a real thing for a real reason. Is all I'm saying. But I mean, it's got to be a coincidence, right? Nobody would do that. Nobody. So, those are a few of my examples of coincidental timing. I would love to hear some of yours. So, please reach out to me. Respond to the videos. You can email me directly at averagediscussion@gmail.com. Maybe when I edit this, I'll put that, right? I don't know. Please reach out to me. Let me know what you think. I'm interested to know what you guys think. I'm interested in examples that I'm not even thinking about. I think that it makes for great conversation. Now, again, I want to make it perfectly clear that I am not saying that these things happened in the manner in which I just talked about. All I'm saying is there is room for question marks. That's all I'm saying. I am not saying that these things happened. It's just really, really interesting timing. So, as always, guys, thank you for being with me. If you made it this far, I'm trying to keep them short because I don't want to do super long ones. I think it's hard for a lot of people to dedicate that amount of time to stuff. I mean, there's one that I listen to. I really enjoy listening to it, but to get the gist of it, I have to dedicate a few hours of my evening to it, and I don't always have that. I mean, I could probably make it, but I don't always have 2 to 3 hours to dedicate to it. But I really enjoy that show that I'm speaking about. It's just I don't know that I can always dedicate that amount of time. So, and also still work on my own projects that I don't even dedicate enough time to. So I try to keep them short. Right now it looks like I'm at about 27 minutes. Okay, so I try to keep them around the half-hour mark. Sometimes I go over that, sometimes I go under that. But half hour, I feel like it is good enough to get my point across. And if I need to elaborate on it, I guess I just make another episode. I mean, that's literally the benefit of being able to do this in my luxurious studio legacy. I don't know, it's a nice car to me. You know, a complete sidebar conversation. I used to be that guy that would make fun of people who drove Subarus, right? And I equated a lot of people who, I call them douche flutes, but vaped. I equated a lot of those people to driving Subarus. And then, long story short, I had this car. It was an okay car. My son actually drives it now. But it was breaking down on me, and I was doing a bunch of half-ass fixes. And so I needed a more reliable car to get to work. More like I wanted a more reliable car because I didn't want to just buckle down and fix the damn car the right way. So either way, I go and I test drive this car, and I'll be damned if I didn't love everything about it. So here I am, eating my own words, driving a Subaru, but I do really like this car. Excuse me. So anyways, I try to keep them around a half hour. I feel like that's good. But also, I don't know if it's good or bad. I need a feedback. So if you like the length, don't like the length, would like more length. Haha, I see what you did there. If you'd like them to be longer, those are all valid critiques. So I'm open for it. Let me know what you like about the show. If you don't like the show, let me know too, and let me know why. Right? Please don't send me stuff like you're just spreading misinformation. I'm not spreading any. I'm not saying any of this is accurate. Just for the record, I am not saying that any of this is accurate. I got everything off of the internet, plain and simple. Dates, time frames, names, all that stuff. Okay, so I'm simply just sharing this information and sharing my conclusion of this information, and some of my own personal beliefs about it. Like, I do believe that the sickness was a real thing for a real reason. That's all I'm saying. And I'm using these things that I was able to find that may be inaccurate. Okay, I'm not saying that they're 100% foolproof, but I don't think they're that far off. That's all I'm doing here. So those types of comments, if anything, please correct me on the information. Elaborate on the information. I am not afraid of confrontation. I'm not looking for it. I don't want to go out there and argue with people. Most days. Some days I do, but I'm not afraid of it. So I'm very open to critiques. Let me know. As always, guys, you can find me on the socials, facebook.com/average discussion. You can find me on Instagram at average discussion. I think it's average_discussion. I don't remember. On X, formerly known as Twitter, at AVG discussion. TikTok, I am on there. Like I said, I don't get on there. I get on there to kill time, but I don't really get on there to promote anything or stuff like that really anymore. What else? Oh, the episode's obviously on Spreaker. I'm on YouTube, youtube.com, channel's Average Discussion. I got some video content up there. Check it out. Let me know what you think. You know, it's a work in progress. That's one thing I will continue to maintain, that this is a work in progress. I'm trying to find better ways to do it, be a little bit more creative. I'm taking ideas from people's stuff. I'm not gonna lie, I'm stealing some ideas from other people, but it's because I'm inspired by them. You know, a little bit of a soapbox thing here. That's kind of how I feel about the cultural appropriation in a lot of cases, not all of them, okay, but you know, there's the Luxor in Vegas, shaped like a pyramid. Does that mean like it's cultural appropriation? Can you not be inspired by something as amazing as the pyramids, right? So that's all I'm getting at. So I'm inspired by these guys and some of the things that they do, and I would like to be able to do some of those things. So I'm biting probably a few things here and there, but I'm trying not to bite their style entirely. That's for sure. And I don't know. It is what it is, right? Like, that's why we have 17 restaurants that all serve the same food, right? But anyways, I've already listed where you can find me. I've already went on my little soapbox. I'm at 32 minutes. I'm breaking my own rules because I just want to talk, man. This is why I got to get this up. So please head over at least to YouTube so I can get live streaming on there. I think you got to have 50 followers on YouTube to be able to stream live. So I would really like to get that up and going so that I can do live streams on YouTube. And I think that would really help. And so if you could, please just head over there. Give the page a subscribe, even if you never come back to it. I mean, I want you to come back to it, but even if you don't, please just help me out. I'm on Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, several other ones. On most places, I think you can find it, the show. So might be some delay in some of the content being uploaded, but it is what it is. So, hey, as always, guys, in the event that I don't get to another episode, I hope you guys all have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, however you want to say it. Okay, happy solstice, whatever. Okay, I hope that it's a good time. I really do. I hope that you have a good time and that you take care of yourself. And as always, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a great day.